Okay, in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys recommendations for the Whatever-You-Want-A-Thon, which is hosted by Maddie from Book Browsering blog. But in this specific video, I will be giving you recommendations for the Read an Author's Debut prompt. I will be splitting this up into a 3-part series where I give you recommendations for 3 of the many prompts. I chose the 3 prompts that were the easiest for me to recommend books for, so I excluded the cover one, then I excluded the ones that are specific to one person, like specific to the reader. So the 3 I narrowed it down to are author debuts, the read a book by an author of color, and the read a book that is indie or self-published. If you're unaware, the Whatever-You-Want-A-Thon is a month-long reading thon. If you're unaware, the Whatever-You-Want-A-Thon is a month-long readathon hosted by Maddie from Book Browsering blog. It runs from the 1st of June to the last day of June and is centered around reading whatever you want to read. The way these recommendations will be grouped is by genre, or more accurately, the team they will be on. I am unfortunately not going to have any recommendations in any of these videos for the middle grade team, so I'm sorry about that, but I will have recommendations for the rest of them. And let's get on to the recs. It's not okay. So the first book I'm going to be recommending is Ruin Song by Julia Ember. This is a YA high fantasy. And that's why I've chosen it for the epic and high team. That is the team that reads epic and high fantasy. It is a Phantom of the Opera retelling, and it follows Cadence, who is the main singer for the Queen, and she does horrible things for the Queen, but it is the only way she can survive and keep her powers. So it is what she has to do. She has no real choice. And she ends up meeting a old friend, and this old friend is very much against the Queen and is in a class that is marginalized by this Queen specifically. And she ends up starting the process of changing Cadence's mind. It is a book that is not revolutionary, but it focuses on revolution and stuff like that. I did not particularly enjoy this book, which is unfortunate because I did receive a copy of this book from the publisher. Like they sent this book specifically to me, and I feel bad that I didn't like it. I feel really bad. I just didn't care for this book. My politics outside of the book kept me from liking it, so I am still gonna recommend it. I just do not like books that frame the rich as being not being the bad guy, as being the persecuted class, and the people who want the rich to be less powerful as the bad guys. So yeah, I didn't end up caring for this book, but it is still a good book. I enjoyed reading it. It's very lyrical, very beautifully written, and the cover is absolutely stunning. I adore it so much. Going on to what else it can cover, it is LGBTQ plus, meaning it has characters, and the author is LGBTQ plus herself. It is sapphic, there's a relationship between the main characters, and it also can fit the team colors prompt. So I think the colors for the Comrades of Chaos are purpley pink. So I am counting it, and you can do whatever you want, really. So I didn't mention this, but if you're here, you probably already know that you can apply the team color and the host prompt point stuff to like teams that are not your own. So keep that in mind as we continue with the recs. The next recommendation is also for the epic and high fantasy team, and this is Girls Made of Snow and Glass by Melissa Bashardust. This is a YA high fantasy once again, and it's another retelling. This one is a Snow White retelling. It is a slow burn feminist Snow White retelling. That is the best way I can pitch it. It is one of my favorite books. It's one of the few books I read during my years-long reading sprint that took up most of my high school experience. So there's that. It is by the same author of Girl, Serpent, Thorn, which some of you have read or heard of. It was pretty hyped, I would say, on BookTube, at least on Sapphic BookTube and on Sapphic Book Twitter. This is much of the same vein. So we have the Snow White character, and she runs. I don't know. I can't remember what's in the blurb for this book, unfortunately, because it's been a while since I've read it, and I cannot tell you what's a spoiler and what's not. But feminist, slow burn, Snow White retelling is the best I can give you. So if any of that appeals to you, check it out. The book also applies to the LGBTQ plus prompt and the team colors prompt, as the cover is black, and that is the colors for the epic and high team. And it is also by an author of color, as Melissa Bashardoust is Persian. This is another Sapphic book. The Sapphic romance does not start until, I would say, the last 75% of the book. Not the last 75%. It doesn't start until 75% of the way into it. So keep that in mind if you want something more present throughout the book, that this might not be for you. Next, we're moving on to Camp Contemporary, and for this, my first recommendation is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is a romantic YA contemporary. It follows our main character as she is trying to become prom queen so she can get a scholarship to her dream school, so that she doesn't have to stress her grandparents out when it comes to paying for her university expenses. She also ends up falling in love with one of her fellow contestants for prom queen. I really enjoyed this book. It is adorable, and it has amazing characters. Like, of this book, the characters are what has always stood out to me about this book, and I just think it is a book with such great characters, and it does a really good job of balancing the heavier topics of racism and the decline of friendships and chronic illness. That's a side plot, just a trigger warning if anyone is dealing with a family member or is dealing with sickle cell anemia themselves. And it balances that stuff with the lighter nature of the romance and the plot, and I just think not the plot of the romance, and I just think it works really well. Okay, this also applies to the LGBT plus prompt. It can also be applied to the team colors prompt, again for the Comrades of Chaos. It is also by an author of color, and it reminds me of a pride flag. This cover in particular reminds me of the bi pride flag, but your mileage may vary as to if this is something you would count. Okay, next we have our next Camp Contemporary recommendation, and this is The Henna Wars by Adiba Yagadar. I often talk about the Henna Wars and You Should See Me in a Crown hand in hand, so you should not be surprised that this is the next book that I'm recommending. This is a YA romantic contemporary that is centered around a high school competition. Our main character Nishat, she comes out to her family, and they do not support her, and while all of this is going on, there's a competition at her high school going on where this group that creates the most successful business wins, and Nishat decides to do a henna business, and unfortunately the love interest Flavia and her white cousin decide they're also going to do a henna business, so It is her dealing with the cultural appropriation and racism she faces at school and the homophobia she faces at home and in her Bengali community. Again, this is a book I really enjoyed. It is just such a hopeful book. I don't know how to describe this book other than it is incredibly hopeful. And it's just incredibly hopeful. If you haven't already checked this out, I highly recommend you do so. So this also applies for the LGBT plus and the bi and author of colors. So you can, yeah, it does that. Sorry, I have forgotten how to speak. Moving on to the Dreams and Drama Queens group. This is for magical and fantastical works. I think an argument could be made for Alatsaway to be for the Comrades of Chaos, and I'm not going to stop you from making that argument, especially since that's my team, but I'm putting it here because I just think it's where it fits, and Alatsaway by Darcy Littlebowder is a YA paranormal mystery. I think some people have said it's a thriller, but I classify it personally more as a mystery, and maybe that's because I don't really like thrillers, but I do like mysteries, and I liked this book, so maybe I'm biased. But it's about a young Lipan Apache woman who is trying to get justice for her murdered cousin. To me, this does read a bit more in the mid-range YA rather than older or younger. I think it is a good representative of like mid-range YA age-wise. It is a entertaining book. It is something that engaged me. I listened to this in December, so I'm on break from school, and I basically just listened to it as I walked around in the freezing weather, and it worked for me. It is entertaining, it's engaging, it has compelling and dynamic characters, and the way mythology, those Lipan Apache and those of outer cultures are weaved into the story and the world building work incredibly well. So this applies to the LGBT plus, as the main character is Ace. It is by an author of color, and it is by an indie publisher. So go ahead, please support this book. It is, I think everyone should support this book. Support this book, please. Moving on, we have The Wicker King by Kay Ankrum. This is a YA contemporary fantasy. Do not ask me what I consider the difference between a contemporary fantasy and a paranormal fantasy. I cannot tell you, but they're the difference, and I feel it in my soul. This is about a young man who he watches as his best friend is pulled into a fantasy world he made up when they were kids, and they are pulled into dangerous quests in order to save the world. If you've read the book, you might be wondering about my classification of it as a fantasy, but it does play around with fantasy elements, and at the end of the day, it is left ambiguous as to what is actually going on. So I think it counts, okay? I think it counts. Also, that isn't spoilers. It's heavily shown in the book that this is left ambiguous. You're not supposed to know if he is going insane or if this is actually happening. I think even the blurb mentions that. So accuse me of spoilers in the comments. I don't really care. This applies to the LGBT plus category. It is also by an author of color. It fits for the teen colors, and it is a host favorite both for the epic and high fantasy team. I forgot to actually pitch this. This is an incredibly emotional read. I cried most of the read, and I am incredibly attached to every character in the book, to the point of when I read Kay Ankrum's other book, The Weight of the Stars, and I saw these characters happy and just very happy, I started crying. I have such a intense emotional attachment to it. it is the characters are dynamic and compelling, and they feel like real people. And if you're a character-driven reader, I highly recommend you pick this book up and pick it up soon. Okay, and we have 3 more books, and they are all in the Comrades of Chaos team. So first up, this is our last YA. It is The Good Luck Girls by Charlotte Nicole Davis. It is a YA Western with fantasy elements or sci-fi elements, some speculative elements. I think it might be both sci-fi and fantasy, but I cannot really remember. It follows 2 sisters. As children, they were sold to this. I can't remember the wording, but basically, they are sold and they are training to become good luck girls, which are They are sold and they become good luck girls which are essentially sex slaves in this society. And on the night of the 16th birthday, the younger sister, on the first day she is supposed to work as a good luck girl, she murders the man she is supposed to. She murders the man who is her client, and she escapes with her sister and 2 of her friends, and one person they have a adversarial relationship with. This is a hard book for me to pitch. Obviously, you heard me stumble over my words because I am not editing this. I refuse to edit this. But it is a book that is, at the end of the day, centered around sisterhood. It is about the strong sisterly relationship between these 2 sisters, and it is about their struggle for freedom in a society that doesn't want them to have it. And I'm always drawn to stories like that, and if you are, you should check this book out because it is amazingly written, and I enjoyed it a lot. I haven't gotten to reading the sequel yet. I'll be honest, I haven't read any sequels to any of the books I read in 2019, 2020 yet, so that's gonna be very fun to catch up on when I finally feel like it. So this applies to LGBT plus because some of the side characters are in a sapphic relationship, but also the author, Charlotte Nicole Davis, is non-binary. It is also by an author of color, and this is something you could also use for the Team Colors prompt, as that is that's pretty close to the pinkish purplish color of the Comrades of Chaos. Next is Gideon the Ninth. You've heard about Gideon the Ninth if you've been on this channel. I know a lot of my videos are privated now, but I used to recommend this book non-stop, like constantly. I would recommend this book to any and everyone. This is an adult sci fantasy. It is hard to put this book into a genre, and I don't think it should be put into a genre. It does some genre bending and genre jumping throughout, so genre is fake. Don't go into this expecting a traditional fantasy, a traditional sci-fi, or a traditional thriller. It is like all 3. It's all 3, and you should read it. Basically, Gideon is an indentured servant to the 9th house, and she is forced to serve the 9th house in a dangerous competition that she may not make out of it alive, but if she does make it out, she gets her freedom. Honestly, the main way I pitch this book is that right down there, I'll get the pointer. Right down there, it says lesbian necromancers explore a haunted gothic palace in space. Decadent nobles vie to serve the deathless empire of skeletons. That is how you pitch this book, okay? I'm very sorry, but that is the only way to pitch the book. An argument could be made that this is for the epic and high team. You can do what you want. I am not gonna stop you from classifying it as whatever you want. But if you've read the book, you are very much going to agree with my assessment that it is a Comrades of Chaos book. It is LGBT+, as both the author and the main characters are lesbians. This book is a lesbian book, but I would not classify it as a romance book. There are romantic elements, but there is not a romance. I repeat, this book does not have a romance. Do not be disappointed when there is not a romance in this book. And then it obviously can fit the team colors for the epic and high team. Our final book is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This is a adult sci-fi. I have written multi-dimensional travel, but make it an allegory. So basically, our main character Kara is a traveler who she travels between multiple different dimensions, and so there are a lot of known parallel universes within the story, not in real life, but within the story there are parallel universes that mimic Earth and have different histories and resources and stuff like that. And Kara is one of the people that travels between them. And this is because you can only travel to worlds where you are dead, and in most worlds she is already dead. And it follows her as she uncovers a conspiracy and has to pretty much save the multiverse. It's nice. This applies to it's also LGBTQ+, and why did I put team colors? I think I forgot to remove team colors. I mean, I think you could argue that this orangey bit right here is the Comrades of Chaos color, and then one of them is blue. Which one is blue? I think it's the Camp Contemporary is blue, so it's fine. You can make it work. And those are all the recs I have for today. I will see you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video, but in the description down below, you will find various links to important causes. Particularly, I will be shouting out for resources for survivors of sexual violence, and resources to help stop the rise of Asian hate that has been swiping the world since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also just links to inform yourself about the latter situation. It's not gonna let me exit. Here we go. Sorry, this is very awkward, guys, but I am not editing this out because I am not editing this video.